but also it was a way to control the narrative, the way that they
You're
could
speaking my language.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, exactly. Like, I know if I use terminology like story and narrative, then you got it. But like, think of it this way, man. Like, how many times do you hear bad streaming advice, right? And you're like, holy shit, don't do that. Like, holy shit, please don't do this. Like, it's not a good idea.
Hello, and welcome to the Insert to Join podcast. I'm Andy the narrator, also joined today by
Lupo to the rescue.
And in this episode, we're going to analyze and critique Twitch's new creator camp. This is a topic that was brought up about a week ago, maybe a little bit more than that. And what we want to do is kind of explore what Twitch's creator camp really is, some of the things that we do and don't like about it, and then also start to make comparisons to Mixer and see how we can kind of bring Mixer into the fold and think about things like audience, addressing onboarding. And then eventually there is a subtopic that I want to get to. Hopefully we can get to that a little bit later, and then I'll bring that up when we get there. So first off, I would love to start with, Lupo, what your initial thoughts are on Twitch's creator camp regarding what the ultimate purpose is, and kind of relate that into what the target audience is.
So it kind of rolled out as like a thing where you can take a look at everything that Twitch has to offer and start showing it to new people or people that are coming into the streaming space for the first time. And I think that is definitely their target demographic, people that are relatively new to broadcasting or streaming, and people that are looking to be successful on Twitch. Obviously Twitch specifically, because we're talking about the creator camp done by Twitch. But it outlines a lot of the things that if you spend a lot of time in streams, you kind of understand, regardless of whether it's been told or not, like a general understanding of things,
right?
Basic etiquette, what to do and what not to do as a broadcaster. It's a lot more than just turning the stream on and getting going. There are a lot more things than just that, and that's what a lot of people think that it is. There's choosing your game choice, choosing the time that you do things, choosing your audience, choosing what time you do things, and which times you do things. That's two separate things in and of itself.
Yep.
But I think they're doing a pretty good job of recognizing a need and trying to fulfill it.
Sure. And I think that it's worth noting what the actual titles of the categories are, because I think that even just like the really broad overview of what it is and what the content is within can kind of like substantiate everything you just said. So the categories, first off, is learn the basics. So they have their Twitch 101, which is where it literally says in the description of the video, this is where it all begins. Learn how Twitch gives you the chance to find an audience and start building a community. And then it has another video that's about the basics, diving into best practices, growing your channel, getting community engagement. It also has etiquette and community guidelines. And then there's another section called Level Up, which is pretty self-explanatory, leveling up, right? Something we're all familiar with as gamers. But really what it talks about is personal branding, emotes, channel analytics, extensions, social media strategy, things that help you get from, okay, I've started, and this is kind of where, or maybe this is how I got started, and maybe I'm starting to stagnate a little bit. Let me think about some of these things that I can do to level up the channel. The next section is connect and engage, which I think is like yet again leveling up. So getting to know your audience, mix it up, moderation and safety, and saying hello to the neighbors. And I think that this is probably one of the most intriguing to me, because this is where you start to break out of your own little sphere, and you can like start to understand more that the content that you're creating is not only just something that you're doing for yourself, but something that's being consumed by other people. And you start to have way more of a sense of community, not only in Twitch itself and with other content creators, but also with the people who view. So I think that's I really like the connect and engage one. And then finally, the get rewarded section, which is the Twitch basics. It's basically just like how to monetize. So they have the Twitch basics, the bits and subscriptions, running ads, sponsorships, things like that. So it's kind of like the whole shebang, I think, at just like a face value level, to kind of say, welcome to Twitch, and here's how Twitch can help you be a content creator, and eventually we need to talk about how you can monetize this. To bring it full circle is to say that really the target audience is initially getting started, right? People who are looking for why Twitch over, any other broadcasting service. And this kind of like helps you, this builds like a certain amount of trust and things like that. And I think that it leads really, really great to our one of the next topics that we have, which is addressing onboarding. And so Lupo, now that we've kind of just ran over the really quick audience, the demographic and what Twitch Creator Camp is trying to do, at least from the surface, what we've seen. I haven't looked through all the videos, but one of the things that I think we can go over now is addressing onboarding. And I would love to get your opinion, especially you being a predominantly or entirely Mixer creator. What is Mixer doing to address onboarding? And also, like, what, if anything, can or should Mixer do something like a Twitch Creator Camp?
Well, I think what Mixer has above anything else is a much easier way for maximum exposure in your early days of creation. Twitch, you're kind of always starting at the bottom, trying to grow your way in. I think with the success of Fortnite, because that's really where we're at this point. I was reading something the other day that over the last 6 months, 1 million new broadcasters have come into the gaming space, and that's doubling. That's doubling the amount of broadcasters on
huge.
Platforms. And this is largely because of Fortnite. With Mixer, you have Hype Zone, which is a way to facilitate exposure. Twitch doesn't necessarily have some of those things. So I think Creator Camp was a thing that they put in place to show off the potential of the platform. And, people see Fortnite, look at people like Ninja, Myth, Dr. Lupo, and say, these guys are making a crap ton of money doing this. Where do I sign up? I think that's where this whole thing begins, because they want people to see like, hey, look, you really have to take yourself seriously. Like, we understand that you're doing this for fun, but if you have the intentions of coming in here and making more of this than fun, making it a career, making it a job, there's steps you have to or should take in order to get to that point, and I think it's actually pretty good that they put the monetary things farther down the list, as opposed to, have a good stream, have a good quality stream, have good audio, have good lighting and video, and all that sort of stuff. Those are the absolute important things of building a stream, as opposed to the monetary aspect of it, because all that stuff will come if you have all the other things in place first. So you build a good, you have a good quality product. You're putting on a good show. You have a good quality visual and audio, and then you start building your network, and that's where those things are going to. While Twitch doesn't necessarily have that upfront exposure that Mixer does, I think that is the greater thing that what Mixer offers right now, because they have Hype Zone. You can get featured as a smaller channel. The odds of it are not as great, but now with the new Mixer dashboard, up and coming is a lot more of a focus, and that's smaller streams. I even think that streams usually within their first couple months, which is definitely good for people just getting started, And those are things that Twitch doesn't offer at all. So, I mean, I see both sides of it. There's a little bit more tutelage with a creator camp, but with Mixer, there's built-in exposure. And the fact that you can basically turn on your Xbox and be privy to these exposures is a great thing in and of itself. So, there's benefits to both sides, I think, personally. But I think if there is a success with this, and people that broadcast on Mixer are not quiet, they're very vocal, and they want their platform to succeed, they will say something to the creators and to the staff. And if this is something that people want to see, they will put it in place.
No, that's great. And you mentioned something like how Mixer has this integrated exposure aspect. If Twitch were to do something similar, do you think that would be like a lights out kind of thing for Mixer? Or do you think that Mixer's like already built itself to a stable point in which, at this point, it's just a matter of how they diversify their platform?
I think we're at a point now where Twitch has seen enough. Like, if Twitch were thinking about it, they've seen enough of it to see that there are absolutely good in both sides of that. The biggest issue up until recently with what Mixer has done with that is the stagnation of diversity, and they're working on trying to fix that. Twitch has done very well for the last however many years on maintaining, proper diverse content. There's always thousands of viewers on pretty much every game you can possibly think of because of how long the platform's been around and how well established people are. So I don't think that they would do something that to try to funnel things into one directory.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I was just curious because I would love to see Mixer just continue to grow, and I worry that maybe Twitch wants to snuff them out. You know what I mean? And anything that they could do to kind of get that competitive edge to try and put the nail in the coffin. I don't think that it's going to happen.
Yeah, I think that's always like the third person perspective, like what you think that they want to do.
Right.
But I think Twitch has improved vastly over the last year because of what Mixer has brought to the table.
I agree.
I think as long as Mixer keeps innovating, like Twitch will be forced to do something different. And they're benefiting from that. It's not a competition. They're not losing out. Like, yes, people are leaving the platform to go to other places, but that's not because of a disdain for the platform or anything like that. They want new challenges, and going to a smaller platform and having to grow there and learning a different way to do the same thing is often gratifying to those type of people. So that's why they do it. It's not necessarily we want to leave Twitch because Twitch doesn't treat us good, or there's not enough people there, because that's obviously not true, but there's other reasons for people looking for different challenges.
Yeah, sounds good. So in the middle of our conversation, we were joined upon by none other than Hoosier Boy himself. Hoosier, you there?
Heyo.
Hey, how's it going, man?
That's solid, dude. I just didn't want to interrupt the flow. My bad. I didn't know you guys were going.
No, it's all good. We just thought we'd fire it up, man. So we've already kind of talked about, we're analyzing and critiquing Twitch's new creator camp, but we're also not just focusing on Twitch's creator camp. We're talking about how this might affect Mixer, and always doing the flip side there. So yeah, if you have anything else to add about like demographics, what the Twitch creator camp is doing, and then how that is kind of related to something that either Mixer can do or something you would like to see Mixer do, or if Mixer even needs to do anything like this at all, or if they're just good with what they're doing.
So I know I got jumped in late, mid conversation with Lupo, but my first impression of the like Twitch creator camp is that there's definitely like varying degrees of like their demographic that they're catering to. So like in the very first episode, it's really just like ensuring people that you don't need to have a 4K $10,000 high quality setup. Like you're okay streaming from whatever you have. Now they don't talk about like how Twitch is primarily, PC gaming. There's, very few, I would argue, like console gamers that truly like succeed into stardom like you see on, Twitch right now, as compared to Mixer, where Mixer is very heavily, like Xbox focused at this time due to like, their arrangement with like on Xbox and Xbox dashboard. So like, I do think like that's interesting that they don't really like talk about that sort of thing. Like when they talk about things to grow your stream, they focus on the things that the streamer, like anyone could do. And I think that's a smart move. But at the same time, like, a lot of that stuff isn't the stuff that people have questions about anymore. Like even ourselves, like we've talked about it. So if people from our range to Twitch and everyone in between have already talked about this topic, then, I feel like there's more they could have contributed that they didn't. But there's also a lot of good stuff in there. Like there's a lot of interesting people that had jump in there. Like, they didn't have Ninja, but they had, his wife, Jay Ghosty, comment about, how to stand out and like how to make a difference and, like all these different things. And I really appreciated their selection because it would have been easy for them to reach out to the top content creators and be like, "Yay, people idolize you. People want to be where you are. Talk about it."
Right. Yeah. This is how we get the Twitch creator camp the most views possible.
Yeah,
we put Ninja on there.
Yeah, but I feel like they didn't go that route, right? Like that would have been an easy answer.
I agree.
But instead they took the smarter decision by getting people who are well spoken the right attention on this subject. I think Jay Ghosty is a super interesting topic because she's a well-spoken, interesting person who happens to be married to the number one streamer. So like people know of her on her own right, and then they also know of her through him. And it was really interesting to like see her thoughts on this because, if anyone has to find a way to stand out, I'm sure it's the spouse of the number one streamer.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, because I'm sure like people immediately are going to think that like, her stream is just living under his hype. But I mean,
no,
I've
not
watched
at
her
all.
Streams. Dude, she's a very like valid content creator in her own right.
Yeah, and I want to interject there too because I've been following Ninja for 7.5 years now, and like I remember when Jessica first started her stream, And I was there for some of those moments. And like, it's never been a question of like, oh, she's just trying to ride Ninja's curtail, right? Like it's never been a question of like herself as a content creator. It's always been a question of like what kind of content creator is she? It's never been a comparison kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like I never once got this feeling that like either of them were exploiting each other. You know, I don't know the inner workings of the relationship, nor will I assume I do. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna make any assumptions here, but it'd be really easy. Like if Hannah, you know, my fiance was a streamer with me, it'd be really easy for me to like exploit her on my stream by having a pretty girl on camera. You know what I mean? Especially at a time on Mixer where like the audience tends to be younger and like that extra thing could be swayed. And I'm not going the whole thing. Like I'm not saying chicks steal views. I'm not making that comparison, but I'm saying that like, you know, like having what she brings to the table and her form, like her entertainment and like, you know, things that she can like jokes she can make that I can't make, you know, at my expense, like that back and forth is like something we have done on stream, but like it didn't work out that same way. Right. Like all the time. And especially like with Jay Ghosty and Ninja, there's things that they could do, man, to, you know, hype up each other. And instead, man, like they're very independent content creators in their own right. And like, that's awesome. But that's why I thought she was a very interesting choice and a very good choice to pick in the topic of like how to make your stream stand out. And then they had like, you know, I forget his full, I don't know if his content creation name is like Brandon, like I don't know what his stream name is, but they had a guy named Brandon. And he was like out there talking about streaming advice. And I follow him on Twitter and he's always out there putting out like quality, you know, advice on how to be a professional and like things in the industry. And like, I really liked what he had to say. And there's a ton of content creators in between, man, that really represented well. But I just feel like there was a whole side of Twitch that like never got like touched on. Like no one was telling them, like it was more addressed to like beginner level stuff, like how to start streaming and how to have the confidence to start streaming. Like don't judge your growth to anybody else's growth. Don't judge your content to anyone else's content. Like don't be an asshat. Like just very like generic things. And I have to go back to it to see like what they really got deep on. But overall, man, I was really impressed with it. I really feel like they did a good job and they structured it well. Like I feel like the order of the topics they spoke about made sense. But I do feel like it wasn't a demographic for already established content creators.
Definitely not.
Yep. And I think that's kind of what Lupo and I were talking about too, is like the demographic really is like that beginner level to almost as like an introduction to Twitch itself to a certain degree. And like it's crazy because I think despite how like narrowly focused that is, I think it's really, really smart on their behalf.
I think it's a great start. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, how many times do we talk about Twitch Prime being a game changer and how many people were brought into the gaming space because of it? You know, I think there's a lot to be said with Ninja being the first person on Twitch to hit 10 million followers. And he's also the first person to play with popular pop culture idols like Drake, Chance the Rapper, NFL players, like all these different things. Like by bridging that gap, he's bringing like Twitch is bringing people that don't normally associate themselves in the gaming space into the gaming space. And I think this creator camp is one of their alternative methods to retain those people. Maybe like how many people came in and they were like, holy shit, dude, like I never realized there was this side of video games. They were like, you know, I can play Mario Kart as good as anybody, but I didn't think anyone would want to watch anybody, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
Or like, you know, alternatively, you know, maybe I'm a shit player at whatever game I like, but maybe like I have some of the funniest moments with my friends and I didn't think that that would be something people would want to share. Like, I think there was a lot of eye-opening experiences because of that. And if you're bringing in all these people, like, why not give them the tools to learn more and keep it in-house? And that's been my perspective on it. And, you know, I'm really glad Twitch started that way, but it just makes me think like, what's next? Like, where can they go from here?
And I think as a content creator myself, this doesn't necessarily help me at all because I'm already like fully aware of these things. Not that I always know the best ways to implement them, but I'm definitely fully aware of everything that's been presented in the creator camp as is.
Okay, so I want to ask you, how are you familiar with those topics already? Like, how did you become familiar with them?
I learned through watching predominantly. I think it's more of, I just kind of picked it up over time. It's weird too, because I probably had like 4 years of total Twitch viewage off and on before I ever even considered streaming. I think that's kind of like, I was already predisposed to all of this because I'm in the gamer culture. You know what I mean? I'm so heavily integrated into it. It's not much of a stretch to say, if I can just capture my screen I think I have good gameplay and I would love to share that with other people. Like that kind of connection for me just made perfect sense. And then to push that even further, to think about it more in the business sense, was just a matter of like, I don't know, going through college and like understanding the work environment.
Yeah.
And like,
Yeah.
I think it's just like some general things that you can pick up along the way. And that's personally, that's kind of where I feel like I learned the most, is just from watching other people.
Okay, and then what about you, Lupo? Like, where'd you? Because I'm sure some of this stuff wasn't new to you, so I'm curious, like, how?
No, like I was exposed to Twitch several years ago. Like the first time I was watching Twitch was 2013. Someone was like, "Hey, look, like people are doing speed runs and stuff like that." I was like, "All right, that's pretty cool. Let's check it out." And you kind of just learn by watching other people. You kind of just feel it out just by being there. But I think with the influx of new users, like new acquisition, like people being exposed to the space for the first time, them seeing how accessible it is for them to do it, they want to get into it now. And just because you have all the equipment, you have an Xbox or a PlayStation that can get you onto Mixer or Twitch, doesn't mean you understand how to conduct yourself on there. And I think that's one of the biggest things that a lot of people run into an issue with. It's something that I and Andy deal with on a regular basis. People come in and ask for shout outs. Like that's improper etiquette, like, and these are the things that Creator Camp addresses, like how to conduct yourself as a broadcaster on a platform. Networking is absolutely essential to growing your brand, but there's good ways to do it and there's bad ways to do it. I think that's really like their emphasis is to continue building a culture out of, around what's already built, and not. So I brought up a stat that was in an article the other day, that basically they doubled their user, like their broadcast acquisition over the last several months. When you think of it that way, you're basically, I don't know how it actually breaks down. If it's not like 51% to 49%, you're almost adding more people than are already there. So you have that potential of a complete culture change if things don't go the right way.
This is like how to make things go the right way.
Exactly. This is like, all right, we have the the dam broke. It's not the biggest deal that it did, but we kind of want all the water to go into one place.
Sure.
that's kind of like what's going on here, is that they really want to make sure it's not going to go south. It's going to stay as close to the same as it possibly can. Like things obviously are always going to evolve, but they don't want it to go in a bad direction. And I think that's really like the biggest emphasis that Creator Camp has on just streaming culture in general.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. And I can, agree with most of that. My big thing, the reason I asked you guys, like, how did you become like, introduced to a lot of these topics prior to Creator Camp, is because, like I said, like, I think a lot of this was introductory level because people have answered this question either live on their own stream or like they've answered in YouTube videos, or like you had the intuition and like the thought to understand, the greater of like, the great value of what you were watching. Right? Like, if you see a streamer behaving a certain way and you give it a little bit of thought to like, why is this streamer not addressing all the shit talking in chat? Oh, because it only encourages more shit talking. Like, oh, probably smart. Like, there's a lot of like ha moments like that when you first come to a platform that I think people are having for the first time now, even though like streaming has been a thing for 7 some years, 8 years.
Yep.
So I think Creator Camp's a good idea. I love to see it. I love that they have plans to continue with it. Sure. They've addressed it on the site that they have, future, I'm not sure what they're wording it, but I know they have like, I don't know if they're calling it like future camps or future whatever, but they're definitely going to like add on to the Creator Camp in some fashion going forward. And I hope they get to the nitty gritty stuff, man. I hope they get to the content or the stuff that makes people, shy away from streaming, right? Like maybe you get into streaming and you're good at doing the bare bones stream, or like maybe you're good at getting viewership in, but you don't understand like what's a big thing. Oh, planning your schedule. So they talked about scheduling a little bit. They talked about the significance of consistency, but they didn't talk about like how it's important maybe when you're starting out to not stream at the same time as all the biggest content creators in that directory. Maybe when you're starting out, you want to start at a point where there's not a ton of competition being relevant because or relative, you know what I mean? Maybe starting at a more advantageous point to get more attention. Like that's something that a lot of people start out with. And like I've seen a lot of videos where people would literally take an Excel sheet, look to write down everyone's times that every single person streams and the games that they play during the week. And they would pick the most vulnerable point in that schedule to stream. And that was their introduction. And then they, as they built a following, they would pick whatever time worked for them in their community at that point. But they would start out doing that, fitting in where they could, and then picking where they wanted to be later. Like that's something I would love to hear their topics on or more topics on, because I didn't really do it that way. Like I just kind of streamed whatever I could afford to stream, and I was very fortunate enough to have it work out for the most part. I definitely feel like when I had availability, it would have been smarter and more worth my time to do it this way.
I agree.
Or alternatively, like when you're growing that following and when you're like building up a community, what are the practical steps to maintain that community? Like when you're getting support left and right, like where do you draw the fine line of like what's showing support and like what's kissing ass and like what you don't want to see? Like I don't know how many people, I'm sure we've all had experience that have been like, yo, dude, you're the greatest. I'm like, hey man, I appreciate it. Thanks for the kind words. And they're like, host me. And like you immediately see their intentions. But how do you weed out the bad guys that are giving you support in meaningful ways, but also undermining your authority in like other ways? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's easy to say just cut them off, but when you're a young content creator, cutting off, that one person could be, your most loyal follower. And it's hard to sever that limb. So like it'd be nice if someone could add some validation there as far as like, how do you deal with that? And like what are some ways that you can prevent that from happening? Like I think a lot of people need to hear that, man. Because for me, like my biggest examples for something like that have been CohhCarnage and Professor Broman. Professor Broman and C-Rex used to run a series called Streaming 101. It's on YouTube. It's on Broman's channel. You can check it there. And they had CohhCarnage be a guest one day. And it was like a 2-hour segment where they all talked about stuff. And it came to a point though where Broman and Co were talking about like their experience with bad mods. And in Co's case, he literally had apparently 2 mods that were at each other's throats and like built a divide in the community that said you're either side A or side B, and the streamer has to pick which side to support, other side has to fuck off. Like that's the ultimate like shit situation. And I don't think anyone's ever really going to be in that situation. At least I hope to God not. But, it doesn't have to be that point to be bad, right? So I would love to hear someone's topics about, that like trimming off the excess in your community and keeping it healthy while also keeping it humble. Like that would be a good topic I would love to hear about more.
Yeah.
But what are some topics like you guys would like to hear going forward?
I know Andy's got one. That's I want to hear him talk about it.
Also, we'll get to that. But before we do that, because I can probably get really winded on that conversation. Before we do that, do you think that with everything that you just mentioned, Hoosh, do you think that Twitch Creator Camp is at least moving in the right direction to address the things that you were just talking about?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, for what they've introduced as their very first, like when they first introduced Creator Camp, I mean, they had like 20 classes. They had a lot. They had a lot of content. They had a lot of variety, options, and topics. Like they covered their bases pretty well at an introductory level. And even I'd argue that a few of those topics even teased into like, intermediary topics. But, nothing was truly advanced. And I feel like for us, none of that stuff was truly aha, like maybe a couple moments here and there that I was like, oh, that's interesting. But like for me, like what I appreciated most of the Creator Camp was seeing the content creators they had selected for this give their impressions. Even if the topics, like even if the content or like the advice was pretty generic as far as like what we've been used to and what we've gone to know, I really appreciated the insight of like who was speaking on the topic. It was one of those things like
credibility, trust.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? Like they had Pokimane in there, they had Jay Ghosty, they had I think Soda Poppin was in there for a second, they had Brandon, they had all these other people. Man, I'm trying to go from the top of my head, and some of them I never even heard before, but I really liked what they had to say. And, it got me interested in them. So, maybe I'll go look them up later. Or for the people I did know, it showed a slightly different side of them that I wasn't accustomed to seeing. And that was, refreshing. So for me, like that was the biggest thing I took out of it, right? It showed a good effort on Twitch's part, and it really got to showcase some of the content creators like credibility and like, their professionalism in the industry. And like that I liked. As far as like the content itself, it's like the advice itself, it's like I feel like it's would have been really nice to have a year ago when I started streaming.
Sure.
But like now I'm at a point where, when I was hounding down information, because like when I started streaming, man, like I was watching those Professor Broman T-Rex Streaming 101 videos. It was before Broman started his podcast where he answered the same streaming questions live. And it was, I had to hunt down all these answers with like Tim the Tap Man, like from 4 years ago, and all these content creators in between, like Miss 5000 Watts. And there's all these other things I had to find from all these different places. And now it's all in one spot.
I think that's what Lupo and I were talking about earlier and why we hit the audience first thing is because the demographic for what we see Twitch Creator Camp as exactly at this moment right now is for you a year ago. That's their target demographic. So it makes sense that this kind of content is a little dry for us, right? It's a little like, okay, that's great. I'm already there for most of it.
Yeah,
and I'm still
like, I don't
like
think
still
anymore.
growing.
Like, I don't think we're the 99% anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think
Right.
we're the majority of content creators anymore. Especially from like, you know, in my case, I'm speaking from a point of privilege. And
Sure.
you know, in your guys' cases, you guys are both very established content creators with, you know, very high quality, you know, streams with very, you know, nice equipment and investment, and you guys have all the right things going. So like, you know, we're speaking from a point of experience that isn't built for that, and 100%.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So that's what I want to see. Though, like, I would love for someone to come in here and just change the game on its head with some expert advice.
Yeah.
But I just don't know if they ever will. You know what I mean?
Sure. And I think that this kind of like segues right into the final topic that I think we should talk about, because serious, I'm gonna go forever on it. But first, I kind of just want to throw it out there, and maybe Lupo, you can talk about it first. Is when I initially heard of Twitch Creator Camp, I thought that it was coming from a perspective of how to address burnout and, you know, like the really intermediary to advanced level advice, I guess. So I thought the Twitch Creator Camp was mainly focused on mental health and like how to continue to be a creator with the daily grind, right? The daily struggle when you're not sitting at the top or even sitting comfortably anywhere, when you're sacrificing your time to do something you love. And so that's where I thought it was really coming from. And that's, again, why we hit the audience first, is because I was mistaken on that behalf. Twitch never really sold this as that. But that was my perspective coming in. And I think it's a really good segue. We were talking about the things that we kind of want to see, or where we want, you know, the Twitch Creator Camp to go next. And I would love to see that intermediary to advanced stage that brings together way more concepts about how to break through the struggle, how to break through the grind, how to create content that you are happy with, how to create content that has a focus on what you like and what you want to do, but also concedes to growth and things like that. Like, those are really difficult things to answer. And I think that was kind of like my bone to pick when I came into this conversation was, what can Twitch Creator Camp do for me? I was kind of in the wrong in that. I think I don't think I should have been focusing on it that way. But Lupo, what do you think about what I've said just now, and maybe relating this back to like the daily grind, right? The struggle, the mental health thing. What do you think about that?
You know, you and I spoke about it a little bit beforehand, that I think that to be responsible for yourself, like, you have to draw a line somewhere and say, like, where am I getting enough out of what I'm putting in? Like, am I getting enough back from what I'm putting in? That does make sense, right? Like, conceptually,
no,
it makes sense.
I understand it 100%. Whether that's monetarily or like spiritually, yes, or anything.
Yes. Or, you know, whether your personal growth in the streaming space is worth the time that you're putting into it. I think what a lot of people struggle with is, you know, that it's a grind. Like, it doesn't always have to be a grind. And if you're making it a grind, then it may or may not be fun at that point. And, you know, if you're out to make it a career, then yes, you're gonna have to put in extra time and a lot of work to do it. But I think you have to set an expectation up front. You can't put all in and then have to dial it back to, you know, to really focus more on your health or what you're doing wrong, or why you're not getting sleep. If that's what you want to put into it, that's what you're going to do. But if you have this expectation, I'm going to grind every day and then hit the mat, you know, hit what I need to hit really fast, and it doesn't happen, you're going to burn out. You will burn out. Like, so I think it's knowing your own limitations, but also knowing when you can stretch it too. You know, it's not always about like a concrete idea.
Do you think that the Twitch Creator Camp may be able to address these kinds of issues?
I don't think it should be there to address the issue. I think it should be there to make people aware of the issue. Their job is to have a platform for people to do the things, and ideally they want people doing the things all the time. So, I mean, from a business perspective, you know, it doesn't make sense for them to stop people from doing it, you know? So they basically just say, just keep playing, shut up and just keep playing, you know? But I mean, from a personal level and a professional level, that they might say something about it, but you can't define someone else's grind. Like, if I want to stream every day, you know, 6 hours a day to get out what I want to get out of it, that's my prerogative, but I have to know that there is that potential that I'm going to get burned out, whether it's physically, it's emotionally, it's mentally, there all of those things are valid concerns, but I recognize that, like Hoosh said, from a point of privilege. Like, I could sit here and say that if I stream 10 hours a day and nothing's going on, I'm sitting there talking to a wall, like it's not worth doing it. Like I lose the fun of it, because like it's about the community, it's about the interactivity of it. And if I'm not getting in what if I'm not getting out what I put in, I struggle with wanting to continue doing it. So does everybody have that filter of saying I need to stop at some point, or I need to fix something at some point? I think that's even a better way to look at it too, is that people think burnout always as, like I've already said, I do this a lot. I've put in X amount of hours and I haven't slept well the last couple of nights, but I have really good growth, this and the other thing. But maybe you're just mentally drained from playing the same game over and over again. That's another aspect of this whole burnout thing, that you're not having fun playing the game. Like, okay, so you have 50 viewers every time you stream, but you hate the game that you stream, so what do you do in that point? Do you take a day off?
Right.
Else, whatever. So burnout isn't as clear cut a thing, and maybe that is something that they can make people aware of.
Right. That was where I was coming from, is to say that if anything, it's what I'm trying to get at is that like they are in a position where they can at least create exposure on the topics. And I think that the Twitch creator camp in particular is probably capable of presenting the topics. I mean, take for instance this podcast. We are currently talking about these things, but what if someone in a position like Twitch with the Twitch creator camp, what if they put their time and effort into addressing issues like this? And I think that you're onto something there, where it's probably not their responsibility, right? It's probably not even in their best vested interests to commit resources to it. But I do think that a part of this Twitch creator camp thing has given Twitch the opportunity to generate a responsible culture. And a responsible culture, they, as this streaming platform, this streaming service, very well should, in my opinion, very well should put forth resources into generating a happier, more productive, and more generally aware culture.
Mm-hmm.
Hoosh, did you have anything to add?
No, I think you guys nailed it, man. Truthfully.
Is there anything else that we want to talk about on the Twitch creator camp topic of the night?
We discussed what it is, who it really is targeted for, what the competition, or at least one competition, has in place of certain things, and why they're not specifically going out of their way to do something like this. And then, kind of discuss our thoughts on the format and the content of it, and potentially what it could offer in the future as well. So I think from my perspective, like, we've covered everything that this could be, both good and bad.
Yeah, I'd say for now, man. Like I said, I would love to follow up with this and see like where they go with it.
We could definitely do like another episode in the future if they update it, or if they do any kind of like extra stuff. I know that they have like live learning sessions, which I think
really that's cool. What I was like referring to earlier. Yeah.
So I mean, like, this is an ongoing thing, so we can definitely keep up with this, and I think we very well should, because in the future, this is probably going to be incredibly relevant to the things that Mixer is doing. And I think also, Hoosh, for your perspective, kind of being that inside partner, you can probably take a lot of these ideas to Mixer themselves and say, hey, this is just like more feedback, and think about these things.
Man, I mean, I get like, why you say that, being in my position, but like, here's the thing: anyone honestly has the ability to provide feedback to Mixer if they just go through the proper channel. So let me just get that URL real quick, because it's the Mixer feedback site. Let me just Google that, because a lot of people are under the impression that like, you're kind of just stuck with Mixer as is. And like, yeah, I love Mixer. We love Mixer, but like, it's not perfect. At least, I hope that, it makes improvements going forward.
Right.
Like, I'm not all star spangled, cross-eyed here to think that Mixer is the all be all ultimate form. But like, I think that there's a lot of good examples out here that Mixer's taking ideas from. Let me just go through this real quick, because they have a ton of, ideas on like chat control and language support, and like user safety, and even like, aggregating different categories together, maybe if it makes sense, or like adding zones to specifically encourage other communities to like, represent themselves, like the retro community, the speedrun community, like things like that. Like people are finding new ways, or like having alternative sub badges. Like that's something people have recommended that got a lot of votes. Here, this one. Free Mixer sub with Xbox Gold or Game Pass. That's a suggestion someone made on the feedback site, and someone on the Mixer team responded, flagged this label as under review, and states that when we announced the Microsoft acquisition, we mentioned how excited we were about the possibility of integration like this. Of course, implementing this idea will require significant thought and planning. If we were to do something like this, we'd make sure to take the time to get it right. So, like they respond back to these ideas, especially if they get enough traction. So if anyone's sitting there with like the idea of a lifetime and they're like, man, I wish Mixer would do this, because if it did, holy shit. Like you should go to this site, go to watchmixer.uservoice.com. All you have to do is just like put in an email to vote for topics and create topics. I believe the email is private unless like you want to make a comment and then it puts out your name out there. But like, you can make your name Bob Jim and really be named Jim Bob, and no one's going to know. Like it doesn't matter. So like you could go that route and like put your idea out there, man. And if you believe in it, then share it with some friends who share it with more friends and who put it out in their community, like put it on Twitter. Like there was one a while ago where it was just bigger emotes. And, there was a lot of feedback where Mixer was basically saying, yeah, if you guys want to see bigger emotes, put it on the feedback site, see what happens. And within like 48 hours, there were like 200 upvotes. So like it could make a difference, man. It just depends on like, if your idea is quality and you know how to market it, then let it get traction, see what happens. And, and that's something anyone can do.
Yeah. And I think to kind of, I don't want to keep dragging this out, but I do think it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I'm curious now if the Twitch creator camp started from some kind of community feedback, or if Twitch was just really cognizant of like, wow, our growth is huge. We need to be retaining these people as not only viewers, but as content creators.
Well, if I had to guess, like my perspective on it is it's all about controlling the narrative and weeding out the bullshit. Like for me, like we said, there's a ton of new users in there. They want to keep those. You want to retain those users, keep them involved, maybe even get some of them streaming themselves. How do you give them the tools to succeed before they just give up? And I think Creator Camp was a way to do that, but also it was a way to control the narrative, the way that they
You're speaking my language.
Like, yeah, it was. Yeah, exactly. Like I know if I use terminology like story and narrative, then you got it. But like, think of it this way, man. Like how many times do you hear bad streaming advice, right? And you're like, holy shit, don't do that. Like, holy shit, please don't do this. Like, it's not a good idea. Or like, it's a short-sighted perspective. That's a short-sighted strategy. Don't do this. And like, I don't think at any point in the creator camp that Twitch gave any advice like this. Maybe to some degree, I think it would have been nice to hear that. Like when you're a starting streamer, it's nice to tag your friends in your tweets. I think when you're getting a following, though, tagging your friend in every single live tweet you have gets obnoxious. Like that's something I think that's fine to start out with, not something to continue doing. But like they never talked about those. They never talked about the things that are okay for right now. They just talked about the things that are always going to be okay, which is good advice. But I think it's not the entire picture, right? Like there's some things you can get away with in the beginning that certainly aren't okay at the end. And, I think that what they gave us was best practices, but it would have been really cool if they like talked about everything in between. Like, what's a good way to start growing that maybe you can't continue doing later. But, like I said, like they weeded out the worst of the worst advice and ensured that nothing that they didn't agree upon or something that wasn't 100% agreed upon in the community. Because I think we're on the same page here. Was there anything you guys did disagree upon in the creator camp?
No. Not specifically.
And that was my understanding too. Like, I don't think there was a single moment where I was like, nah. Like, I think everything they said was, pretty safe, or at least like very understanding and easy to understand. And that was the whole point. Putting out good advice that's globally or universally accepted in the space that, allows people to go directly from Twitch, the site, to when they Google how to stream on Twitch, this is the first thing that shows up, I'm sure. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think that's my understanding of it. I bet it was a marketing move, a PR like move to control that narrative as much as it was anything else.
Sure. So what about you, Lupo? Do you think that this is something that Twitch was just like on top of from the beginning? Like, hey, let's control this narrative. We this new user acquisition. Let's keep these people. Or perhaps this was actually something that was like a community feedback thing from years ago that they just now realized may have been what they wanted
No,
to do?
I don't think it was a years. I think it was a reaction to recent acquisition.
Awesome.
I
definitely
think largely because of that.
Sure.
Yeah, I definitely think there was some community involvement because I'm sure the people have been asking for this for years. I'm sure people wanted, a Twitch approved, Twitch verified source of growth.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, even if you go that direction of it, look at the sources that they used to promote their growth. They used people that were already out there, and I think that's the whole point, though, is that Twitch doesn't have the all be all answers. They're just the medium to showcase the people that do.
Yeah.
And I don't want people to get lost in that and think like it has to be what Twitch says or nothing, because there's a lot of good content creation advice out there that isn't on Twitch, or maybe they are on Twitch but they weren't showcasing the creator camp. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So
no, all good stuff. I think that's gonna wrap it up for this episode. I gotta say, this was a really good one. I really appreciated the talks that we had.
Absolutely.
I definitely didn't realize that we were gonna go as deep and as wide as we did. But it was a really great conversation. I do think that there's a lot of topics that we covered today too, that not only span the Twitch creator camp and like what it's doing in particular, but that kind of touches on some of the things that I think that we might start seeing in the future, of like more responsible content, more responsible culture generation, and more responsible content creation, and more responsible viewership and things like that. So I thought tonight was a really good talk. High five. All right. Perfect.
All around.
Across the internet.
That's going to do it for this episode. Thanks everybody for tuning in, but we always got to ask, next time, will you insert to join?